Good morning, my dear students. Today a few of you have got examination. I know the IBPS clerical examination prelims, the series of examinations is starting today. So I know that the number of participants will be on the lesser side today, but of course we cannot postpone the program. That is why I have decided to come. I am trying my best to improve the contents of the program. The overall aim of the program is to inculcate the habit of reading in you, because I know that how it is going to transform you. If you are asked to write on a particular topic, whatever the topic be, and if you are not able to write on that, there could be two reasons. One, you do not know the subject, the topic. Two, you do not have the language, or it can be a combination of both. So you got to know the contents very well. That is very important. That is why I ask you to read the newspapers. It is not just for getting good marks for examinations alone that I request all of you to read the newspapers. So make sure that you all read the newspaper with a kind of the real push. You got to have an appetite to read, then things will fall in place. Yesterday we spoke about one topic. We spoke about the farmers' strike in detail. Today I shall speak about free trade. What is free trade? Before I analyze the newspapers, I shall speak about free trade. Recently we read about RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Program or Package, RCEP, that was signed among 15 nations. India opted out of RCEP. So RCEP is a classic example for a free trade. So a person who prepares for all these competitive examinations should know what free trade is. So I shall speak about free trade in the simplest possible way. I shall try to explain what free trade is. So this will create a good platform for you to further read on the topic and have a good idea about what free trade is. Okay, so let us start. Free trade is a trade policy that does not restrict imports or exports. Free trade is a trade policy that does not restrict imports or exports. It can also be understood as the free market idea applied to international trade. There is a broad consensus among economists that protectionism has a negative impact on economic growth and economic welfare, while free trade and reduction of trade barriers, tariff barriers, have a positive effect on economic growth and economic stability. So free trade has got plenty of, or it provides plenty of opportunities, while protectionism restricts the economy from growing. That is the general understanding. Generally, governments impose barriers to protect domestic industry or to punish a trading partner. We know that America has imposed a trade embargo against Iran. It is punishing, it is to punish Iran that America imposed a trade embargo. Now, India does not allow imports of rubber from Malaysia. It is to protect the Indian rubber market, the Kerala rubber manufacturers, rubber market. So it is to protect the domestic industry or to punish a trading partner that countries impose trade barriers. Trade barriers such as taxes on food imports or subsidies for farmers in developed economies lead to overproduction and dumping on world markets, thus lowering prices and hurting poor country farmers. I have read a few years ago that the poverty of the entire Western Africa can be stopped the moment America stops subsidy to American cotton manufacturers. The moment America stops subsidizing American cotton manufacturers, the entire poverty of Africa, Western Africa, can be wiped off. Now, what are the different kinds of trade barriers that governments across the world impose? One, tariff barriers. These are taxes on certain imports. India is imposing taxes on, say, Chinese product. When the taxes go up, the products will become unaffordable. Next, non-tariff barriers. This involves rules and restrictions which make trade more difficult. Recently, India banned around 250 mobile applications that have Chinese connection. That is a non-tariff barrier. Quotas. A limit is placed on number of imports. That is also called quantitative restrictions. Quotas and quantitative restrictions. Voluntary export restraint, VER. We know that recently when onion prices went up in domestic market, we imposed restriction on onion exports from India. Subsidies. Indian government provides subsidies to Indian farmers. This is a kind of a trade restriction, in the sense that we are encouraging Indian farmers, we are subsidizing, we are compensating Indian farmers for their production. So when similar foreign products come to India, they will not be able to compete with the Indian product. That is the effect of subsidy. The last one is embargo, trade embargo. That is also a kind of a trade restriction. Trade embargo is, embargoes are imposed. Example is American trade embargo against Iran. British economists Adam Smith and David Ricardo, who later developed the idea of free trade into its modern and recognizable form. Economists who have advocated free trade believed trade was the reason why certain civilizations prospered economically. Trade was the reason for economic prosperity of certain nations. So those economists thought that the more you free the economies, the trade, the more prosperity can be achieved. The first free trade agreement, the Cobden-Chevalier Treaty, was put in place in 1860 between Britain and France. Before that, Britain had reduced trade restrictions in a very big way, and Britain prospered. So many countries were interested in following the British way, and they also reduced trade barriers. So the first trade treaty was signed between Britain and France in 1860. The Cobden-Chevalier Treaty of 1860 lowered or eliminated duties levied on goods traded between Britain and France. The General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, GATT, you may know what GATT is. The General Agreement on Tariff and Trade was signed by 23 countries, and it came to being on January 1, 1948. The purpose of GATT was to make international trade easier. GATT's main objective was to reduce barriers to international trade through reduction of tariffs, quotas and subsidies. One of the main reasons why the collapse of GATT was that the organization was in favor of industrialized nations, and the developing nations lost confidence in GATT. Then the new avatar of GATT began on January 1, 1995, that is called the World Trade Organization, WTO. You all must be familiar with these new terminologies, GATT, World Trade Organizations, etc. WTO is headquartered in Geneva and it is the biggest multilateral agreement facilitating international trade. The goal of WTO is to ensure that trade flows smoothly and predictably as possible. If a trade dispute occurs, the WTO works to resolve it. The goods and services must flow beyond the artificial boundaries of nations. That is the idea of free trade. So, what is the idea of free trade? The goods and services must flow beyond the artificial boundaries of nations. GATT dealt with trade in goods alone. The WTO covers services, intellectual properties, etc. The WTO dispute settlement system is faster, more automatic than the old GATT system. Its rulings cannot be blocked. So, if a country has got a complaint against another country that the other country is restricting the entry of goods from this first country, then it can move WTO, and WTO has got a redressal system. Once WTO rules out, then it is final, it cannot be blocked. The European Union, NAFTA, North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement, ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, SAFTA, South Asian Free Trade Agreement. Of course, SAFTA is a non-starter thanks to poor relations between India, Pakistan. So, SAFTA has always been a non-starter. These are all examples for regional integration, regional free trade agreements. WTO, it is the multilateral, all countries are members of WTO, most of the countries. Afghanistan became a member country in 2016 and many countries are waiting for their entry to WTO. The triad of North America, Western Europe and Asia Pacific have the most successful trade blocs. The recently signed RCEP has created the biggest trade bloc in the world, covering almost 30% of global GDP. So, now you have got some idea about what free trade is. So, free trade is essential ingredient of economic welfare of people. So, now I shall move on to the regular news items. Before that, I would like to ask you, have you all got an idea about free trade? Please respond to me, I would like to know. Hello, please respond to me. A few people may at least respond to me whether the discussion that I had today was useful to you. Hello, I am waiting for your response. That is important for me to continue, please. If that was the case, then I shall come with more topics. Okay, I will come with more topics in the days to come and we can have larger discussions. You get a chance to review the discussion again and yes, okay, thank you all. Good to hear that you all are being benefited. So, now I am moving on to the other news items. Please subscribe to our social media sites, our YouTube channel, make public postings, positive public postings that will all serve as an encouragement to us. So, the Hindu dated December 4 will be discussed today. Rajinikanth is launching political party. I am dealing with the Chennai edition of the Hindu, so that is why this has come to the prominence. Government offers to make 8 changes to farm laws. I told you that government has to mend its ways before farmers, because they do not have political affiliations, they have got genuine concerns and we discussed them in detail yesterday. Government offers to make 8 changes to farm laws. Government says that it will ensure that MSP is not withdrawn, will not be withdrawn and government says that APMCs will not be dismantled, but still farmers have got genuine concerns. Today it is the 10th day of their strike and they have called for a Bharat Bandh. So they said that they are ready to stay in Delhi for 6 months. So, and unless they were not properly consulted, that was the major concern of theirs, and government hastily passed these laws, especially under the mask of COVID. In June, when COVID was at its peak, government camouflaged their efforts to come out with the ordinance. What was the haste in coming out with an ordinance and later on converting them into a law? That was done in September. So anyway, I briefed you everything in my yesterday's discussion, and I am sure that you are on a good platform to understand things more. Indian vaccines after phase 3 trials. Okay. So Indian vaccine, there are plenty of Indian vaccine candidates there, so they will also be tested, and news is emerging on vaccine. Prime Minister announced that the vaccines will be ready in a few weeks time. So we are going for a mammoth vaccination program. This could be the biggest vaccination program on planet Earth in the shortest span of time. So let us see what is going to happen. The government clearly said that government does not aim at a universal vaccination program, meaning it will not vaccinate all the people, rather it will be given only on a priority basis, and the government's aim is to break the chain by vaccinating only the people who need, and there is no need for vaccinating other people. That is the government stand. Once the chain is broken, then there is no need to vaccinate all other people. That is the governmental intention. So we have to wait and see how the vaccination program is being implemented by the government. 10 best performing police stations in India. Manipur's Nongpok Sekmai tops list, very important. This is going to come for your examination, very important. Nongpok Sekmai in Manipur's Thobal district has been selected as the best performing police station in the country, very important, followed by AWPS Surmangalam in Tamil Nadu, Salem city, and Kasarang in Arunachal Pradesh, very important. This is the bet of the day, this may come. So please ensure that you take down the names and keep them in your mind. So it is not just the best police station, the second best and the third best may be important. So please take down. So Government of India has selected the best police stations. As I told you earlier, police are the cohesive arm of the state. There are people who equate police with the government. Many governments in the past had to resign for the reason for police atrocities. So police are the cohesive arm of the state, and police have to behave. People must be able to go to the police station as if they were moving to any other civilian office. But of course we still follow the British rule, British adage is still there, and police stations are at times inhuman. So these are all initiatives to improve policing in the country and to teach the Indian police how to police a democracy. So let us see. The Iran challenge, this also I briefly discussed. Iran and the United States of America signed the nuclear agreement in 2015. Iran had nuclear aspirations, creating nuclear weapons. To restrain Iran from creating nuclear weapons, the agreement was signed in 2015. But in 2018, the Trump administration unilaterally moved out of the agreement criticizing Iran, and Iran also openly said that they would pursue their nuclear aspirations. So, the job is on hand for the Biden administration to ensure that Iran is brought back to the table of negotiations and the agreement of nuclear disarmament is encouraged. So, we have to wait and see. Now, what America says is that they are going to, the new administration has got plans to impose or buy more guarantees from Iran, and the article says, the Hindu newspaper suggests that the Biden administration should not move on those lines, rather they should try to convince Iran the need for negotiations. So, how it evolves, how the new administration, the White House administration is going to negotiate with Iran is something that all are looking at. A good readable editorial. Carefully monitoring Brahmaputra developments, says India. We know that China is planning for a few dams at the lower stream of Brahmaputra river. So, we have got concerns. If big dams are constructed in the lower stretches of Chinese territories, then the Indian territories would be always under threat. The China says that it has got the sovereign authority to construct dams in their own sovereign places, but Indian concern is that big dams are always a bomb. There is a worldwide consensus and conscience against big dams. Big dams, if constructed, will create cataclysmic effects. So, it will even result in earthquakes, modern studies say. So, there is a larger consensus and there is a kind of a common opinion against big dams, but China, undermining all these concerns, have decided to construct dams in their lower stretches of their territories, which will be a major concern for many Indian states. So, India says that India is closely watching the Chinese movement, and we have already shared our concerns with the Chinese government. So, Brahmaputra is known as Yarlung Shangbu in Tibet. The name of Brahmaputra in Tibet is Yarlung Shangbu, so Zangbo. So, please read, this is going to be a major news in the days to come. 2 homes for transgender children in Bengaluru. India's first homes for transgender children in need of care and protection will be established in Bengaluru. Very important. Whenever the first, the biggest, the greatest happen in India, then it is very important for the examination. So, the first transgender homes for first homes for transgender children in India will be opened in Bengaluru. So, read, very important, note down. US to block import of slave labor cotton from China. Listen, the differences of opinion between China and America are emerging, and mind you, China is an authority to reckon with, a force to reckon with now. It is the second biggest economy. So, if the biggest 2 economies quarrel and divide the countries, divide the world, then we are going back to the old Cold War era type of economies. Other countries will be forced to side with any of the blocks. So, the Soviet bloc and the American bloc destroyed the world and did not allow millions of people to come out of poverty during the Cold War era time that spanned between 1945 and 1988. Now, there is another imbalance is creating. So, there is the US bloc and the Chinese bloc. If these two countries do not find a common platform to trade and have international peace and amity, then it will be a problematic stuff. So, we have to wait and see how these things emerge. Now, in this instance, US to block import of slave labor cotton from China. US has said that we will not allow import of cotton from China, citing the slave labor used in Chinese Xinjiang region. So, read this. Cyclone Buravi, of course, it did not cause much damage to India as anticipated, which was a really good thing, but the name Chinese, the Buravi, must be kept in mind. There were 3 cyclones in India this year. The first was the one that hit West Bengal, the biggest one, that was called Amphan in May, and in June cyclone Nisarg struck Maharashtra, which caused damages. Now Buravi, it was Buravi's turn. So, frequency of typhoons in the eastern part of India, in the Indian Ocean and Indian Ocean is increasing. That is a kind of a worrisome stuff, and it could be because of the climatic changes. Iran moves to step up nuclear enrichment. This is what I just told you. Yeah, Tehran's nuclear deal, this was signed in 2015, under which America promised to withdraw sanctions against Iran, but now in 2018 the Trump administration unilaterally withdrew from this agreement. So, now Iran says that it is free to move back to the ways of nuclear enrichment. So, please read. Economy firmly on the path of V-shaped recovery, says government. During, what is meant by V-shape? During the times of lockdown, the economy went down like this, now it is going back. This is what is called V-shape improvement. So, government seems to be very, very optimistic, relying heavily on in-house data of the government, but independent experts say that it is a bit too early to be exuberant about. We have to wait and see how the economy get back to normalcy. Economists having no affiliations to government say that in the core sector only fertilizers is doing good, all other 7 core sector economies are doing bad. The electricity consumption has come down, diesel consumption has come down, so banks are also not in good shape. So, considering all these things, there are not too much to be happy about, and the recent growth in GST collections, September, October and November were good for the government, and in October and November it crossed even 1 lakh crore, but they were much below the target fixed by the government for that time. But anyway, so that GST growth was due to the pent up demand, that is what the government says, sorry, private economists say, but the government seems to be believing too much or drawing too many conclusions from the GST, the return of the GST collections to normal levels. So, anyway, we have to wait and see what is going to happen. RBI halts HDFC Bank from issuing new credit cards, important from your examination point of view also. RBI has asked HDFC Bank to not to issue fresh credit cards, temporarily stopped digital banking initiatives and sourcing of new credit card customers. So, what is the reason and all? You just go through, very, very, very important. From the point of view of exams also, this is going to be very important. Which bank is banned by RBI? HCL's Roshni tops the list of India's richest women. HCL Technologies chairperson Roshni Nadar Malhotra with a net worth of 54,850 crore tops Kotak's wealth, her own list of India's wealthiest women. So very important from the perspective of examination, these information, these sort of information are very important. So please make sure that you read and jot down. Trailing her is Biocon's Kiran Majumdar Shah with net worth of 36,600 crore, that is a bio company. So very important, take down. Thank you very much for watching the program. I hope you all like it. I promise you that I will learn on the job and I will come with more promising newspaper discussions. So ensure that you are okay. I shall come with more topics. You expect more topics and I shall respond very positively. Thank you very much. I know that the lower turnout today is because of the examination, the IBPS clerical examination. More exams are coming in the days to come. State Bank of India is expected to make its call of clerical cadre examination on in January 2021. So work hard. We all are going through a bad time, but there must be hope to all of us. Work hard. Thank you very much. I am signing off for the day. Have a very nice day ahead. We shall meet you again at 3 o'clock. Thank you very much.